We're going to talk about iconic props from the 1980s.
Gentlemen, we're history.
I'm Scott. Here's Mark, Poppy, and Matt in the back. A lot of these movies I saw at the theater, so I'm excited about this one.
Me too. These are like very transformative film experiences from my childhood. Poppy, you were born in the 80s, right?
Sure was. 85.
Scott, you were... Never mind.
There are so many iconic props from the 1980s, there's no way we're going to be able to cover them all in one video.
Yeah, we're going to do one-off episodes in the future of certain films from certain decades that have a lot of iconic props. So if you're not seeing something you want to see, it's going to happen in the futures.
All right, first up is The Natural, starring Robert Redford.
Ooh.
And co-starring Wilford Brimley.
So if we're doing The Natural, I have a feeling it's a baseball bat.
Normally you would turn these on the lathe, but Robert Redford's character as a child makes a baseball bat by hand. He wood burns Wonder Boy and a lightning bolt.
And I know that the bat in the story, he makes it from a piece of a tree that was struck by lightning.
Hence the lightning bolt. Barry Beddig was the prop master of The Natural, and he had literally hundreds of bats. He found a factory in New York that would just sell him a ton of blanks. For the making of the bat, he went the old school route and where they did the shaving it off. Well, the prop master had to take a lot of swings at it, but he finally got it. So he started out with just a bunch of the blanks, the pieces of wood. So they had three different stages of
looks. Let me see that bat.
As far as for the actual Wonder Boy bat that he uses in the games, they had to have many multiples. The close-ups of the one that they were making was not turned on a lathe, but I guarantee you the hero one was.
I wanted it to be a very special bat.
The prop master states that baseball bats in their time period that the film was set in, they were the same as regulation today. So it was easy for him to have them made.
Yeah.
It was like pre-1901, they were larger, but now they've been the same for over 100 years. Producer Mark Johnson donated the Wonder Boy bat, the Savoy Special, along with a couple of other items to the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Oh, that's cool.
And that's where it is today, if you want to see it.
We've got Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
The stars at night are big and bright.
Deep in the heart of Texas. Guess what the prop is?
Scooter.
Mark wins. It's the bike. So it's a Schwinn DX. They got all the bikes from a place called Pedal Pusher in Newport Beach. So they got all 14 bikes.
From one place.
Mm-hmm. None of them came fully assembled. They never had like one double. So it was always matching, but based on their budget.
That's weird.
Yeah, it's strange. But we've been down that road before. And they had to pick and choose, like they had to build them on the day with all the accoutrement that go with it.
I mean, it's so specific. There's so many little bells and whistles
So
on
many.
it.
Because he shoots the water, he shoots smoke, he flies.
Yeah, this was a situation where the props team, who would be in charge of the bike, would have been working really closely with special effects, with stunts. There's a big mistake there.
And surely the DP knew, oh, I'm seeing it being fed at the bottom.
Films are shot with, there's the safe area for TV, but there's also the safe area for theatrical release.
James Brolin played Pee-wee,
Yeah, PW.
which is the best casting.
Yeah.
He's popular.
Time Bandits, directed by Terry Gilliam, 1982?
Produced by George Harrison.
My dog's name is George Harrison. One of my dogs' name is George Harrison.
The prop is the Supreme Being's map, which of course the Time Bandits have stolen, and they use it to travel through time, finding these time holes on the map, sending them through various parts of history where they rob and steal from people. And apparently they only made 3,
I was going to ask.
which is crazy. One they used for rehearsals. There was one they used on camera, and then there was one they kept as backup that was left pristine, like it was never aged. Terry Gilliam, he hired a graphic designer. He gave him a few books as reference that had like astrological charts and old maps of cities from the 1700s. And it's on a canvas, and it was screen printed, and it was very detailed.
The fact that it was printed on canvas, that's why they were able to get away with only 3, because it was extremely durable, I'm sure. It had to be.
And then once it was screen printed, it was that main blue. He went back in and he put the white lines on it to create kind of grids in the map. And then he kind of painted some like faint galaxies in the background, astrological symbols using like royal colors. He said golds and purples and different kinds of blues.
So you're saying the third map remained pristine.
Yeah.
So they went through the whole movie with just 2 maps.
And really one, because one was for rehearsals.
It gets held and touched by like at least 10 different actors. That's amazing. Clash of the Titans 1981. I saw this in the theaters when I was 11. It's directed by Ray Harryhausen, who's known for doing a lot of stop motion.
He's the king of stop motion.
There's this mechanical owl named Bubo, which means owl, by the way. It's a Latin. It's a Latin term. It was a full mechanical version that they had for interacting with humans, and a smaller version that they would use for mainly for flying. Ray Harryhausen designed it. I'm not sure who made it, but I did read something from one of the stop motion assistants who said that there was the one that they're holding. It's about 13 inches high. So as you see, there are lights. The one that Burgess Meredith is holding, there's lights that go on.
Scott, can you talk to me about he's got like a crutch and a bandage?
There is a crutch. He's got a cast on. I never noticed that. That is a little mini crutch and a cast on his leg.
I'll allow it.
Ray Harryhausen passed away in 2013. There is a Ray Harryhausen Foundation where they have all of the stuff cataloged. They lend a lot of the items to museums and their traveling exhibits. Ray Harryhausen never threw anything away. So all of his models, going back to the early Sinbad movies, he had all these garages. And he lost Bubo. One of his photographer friends said, I'm going to go through everything. We're going to find this. So after 27 years, they found it in the far back corner in a wooden crate marked London. And it was wrapped in a white sheet in pristine condition.
Okay, so this is one of my favorite movies. This is one movie I've actually seen. The Telephone Booth from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
What's the 411 on this movie?
I don't know how many people haven't seen this movie, but it's about 2 dim-witted guys in San Dimas, California that travel through time and pick out various people from history to help them do a history report. In such, they save the world by making very excellent music. So our younger viewers may not know, but this is how you would call people back in the day. You throw a quarter in and you can make a phone call.
Was there just one phone booth?
There had to be different phone booths, basically, because there's different portions of the movie where they have stuffed 12 people in it, and it's laying long ways, and everyone's standing outside the door.
Oh, right
as
there.
you can see here. So they have different versions of it, but they didn't want them to get too large. So I couldn't find a count on how many they actually made.
You can see how giant it is.
But yeah, you can see that there's definitely had to be different. And they had to have different versions for the antennas, because different portions of the antenna's broken, it's fixed.
Just an umbrella.
Well, my guess is that they started out with an existing phone booth. Right. And then they had a fabricator match it and replicate it, and then of course they made the larger version for when it has to basically be a boat.
Right.
And I'm sure they made it out of all aluminum, so it was much lighter weight.
I'm sure some of that's plexi and not glass.
You can get a replica of these for around $9,000.
Yeah, you can also find toy versions. I'm just going to take it down a little bit. We're going to get a little romantic. Say Anything, the boombox.
Hold on, that's a Toshiba RTS X1.
What? So John Cusack, he's holding the boombox above his head. He's playing Peter Gabriel's In Your Eyes. He's trying to woo Diane Court back to him. She has left him by this point in the film. As far as the boombox goes, it's not that interesting of a story. So the prop master of this movie, Barry Bettig, basically said that, you know, he had gathered a lot of things, like when you're doing a film, you gather a bunch of stuff that you need for the show, and then you do a show and tell for the director. So he just had a handful of boomboxes, and Cameron Crowe just said, that one.
I believe he said he rented it from a prop house, right?
Yeah, I think it's a rental.
It was a rental from a prop house, and it just had to go back to the prop house at the end, and who knows what happened to it.
Yeah, and this scene is an example of how when you're making a film or a show, you don't know necessarily what's going to become iconic. And the thing about this scene is it's so iconic, it has been parodied at least 13 times. Most famously was parodied in Deadpool 2.
It speaks volumes for how iconic that boombox is.
It's a twofer, guys. It's another boombox. Do the Right Thing, Radio Raheen. It's
a JS1 Jumbo.
It's a Pro Max Super Jumbo.
It's a JS1 Pro Max Super Jumbo.
Yes. And Do the Right Thing, Radio Rahim is always holding and carrying this giant boombox, blasting Public Enemy.
Speaking of Public Enemy, if you look at the sides of it, they've got they glued pieces of the Public Enemy album.
You know, this was a trend in the 80s where people would walk around with the boomboxes on their shoulders, or they would just carry them around. You know, the prop master, basically his brief was just find the biggest, coolest one you can. And that's what he came up with. And it's iconic. I mean, it's got lights, it's huge. And then at the end, Sal crushes, but even breaking one took for a while, apparently, because these things were so robust. That would be cool to have. And the real one, ironically, Spike Lee, he gave to the film critic Gene Siskel of Siskel and Ebert, who I guess was a big fan of this movie. And he autographed the back of it to Gene. Fight the power, because, you know, Gene Siskel really has to fight the power. And then when he died, the state basically handed it over to Smithsonian, which it still is there today. You can go see it. 2 iconic boomboxes.
This is the Tom Hanks film directed by Penny Marshall. It's called Big. So you have the Zultar Speaks machine. A lot of people just say the Zultar machine, but no, it's Zultar Speaks. The prop master, James Mazzola, had a local amusement company build it. So it has that good kind of turn of the century feel, timeless look to it. And it was totally puppeteered by the prop master. And those really didn't work. You know, operating the lights, everything. The prop master had it built where he could fit inside it, and he operated the mouth. He said the hardest part was the chute that swings over that you drop the coin into. From inside, he was turning the chute to where the coin would drop into the mouth. Now, I took a little bit of a deep dive trying to figure out where this Zultar machine is, because there was only one. I found a YouTube video where this guy made a trek to Burbank and found out that it was at the Falcon Theater, which is now the Gary Marshall Theater. I called the Gary Marshall Theater yesterday and left a message, and at like 10 o'clock last night, the manager of the Gary Marshall Theater called me back and said, well, I hate to disappoint you, but when Gary Marshall died, I guess in 2016, not long after, I guess one of the family members or whatever, it got removed from the lobby. So it's back into the hands of the Marshall family estate.
Okay.
So
it's probably in one of their houses.
But up until a few years ago, you could just go to the Gary Marshall Theater in Burbank and see it in the lobby.
Guys, can we do a bit about a movie that made a random Australian dude really famous for a bit?
Yeah, I got you. Crocodile Dundee.
Aye, perfect.
And our iconic prop is his knife, which is a Bowie-style knife.
I wonder if the director yelled cut, or if that confused things.
John Bowring was the prop designer, maybe the armorer for this movie. And he was in charge of coming up with the weapons. And so he had a meeting about the knife. It was basically said, we just want something really big. He was getting like next to no direction. So he's like, let me build something and I'll show it to you and you tell me.
Very specific. Bigger.
Big knife, yeah. He fabricated an aluminum version. You know, it's just easier, it's lighter. If they're not having to interact with things, you know, you can dull it, and it's very safe to use. And brought it and showed it to them, and they said, this is perfect. So he's like, no changes? Like, no changes. Paul Hogan, he went to John and said, when's my stainless steel knife coming? He said, well, you're not cutting anything in the movie, we don't think it's necessarily. He said, well, there's a scene, and he described the scene to him. He said, well, I haven't read that. And he said, well, I haven't written it yet. And start making the knife. So they had stainless steel ones also made.
He waves it in front of the Michael Jackson guy, and his jacket just shreds somehow.
Nicely done, Poppy. Any way you slice it, it's just a knife.
Last but not least, it's just a little movie called Short Circuit. So they're like attack robots. They've got like lasers and, you know, military grade parts. And one of them gets struck by lightning and comes alive, becomes a sentient being.
I like this opening.
Yes, the opening is pretty cool because the opening credits, you see them building this thing that was designed by Sid Mead, who's a famous futurist who worked with Tron, Aliens, Blade Runner, Star Trek. And then this robotics prop puppeteer guy named Eric Allum. They kind of designed it together, and then Eric Allum was the guy on set. And the thing about the robots is, other than a few capabilities, it was almost all puppeteering. And each one would take, like Johnny Five would take a few people to do, because they were doing different things. The eyebrows, the eyes, all those things. The eyebrows, that was a thing that just right before they started shooting, and they were thinking about the eyebrows on cameras. So they put those eyebrows as eyebrows, and it really saved them because it basically creates the emotion.
I can't help but wonder if this was inspiration for WALL-E.
There was an article from not too long ago that was talking about how surprisingly realistic these robots are in terms of the way they were designed. They move around on tracks like a tank. They have 3-fingered hands, camera/lenses for eyes. So basically, this mirrors a lot of robots that were made at the time and later even, other than the fact that it is the second prop on the list that was struck by lightning in the film.
If you include the telephone booth, that's powered by lightning-ish.
Oh, it's struck by lightning. That's 3 of them. Well, that was tubular. That's it for iconic props of the 80s. We swung for the fences in a timely fashion, struck lightning not once, not twice, 3 times, but only 2 booms. No matter how you slice it, it was big.
It's like riding a bike.
We're naturals.
Put stuff in the comments.
Yeah, tell us what you think, and I think we're done. Really out in the outfield. That was right, came out of left field.
We can't, it's a family show. 4 balls mean you're walking.
Batta, swing, batta. Now we're Dundee.
Dundee. Zultar.